Hello, everyone, and welcome to a personal project of mine. I'm gonna try something I've kind of kicked around the idea of doing, going as far back as high school, more recently a couple of years ago, but recently it's picked up some of my thoughts I've been having about wanting to figure out how to do not exactly a vlog, because I feel like vlogs are when people talk about their daily life or recent happenings and things like that, being that it is a blog. But this is more me trying to figure out how I think and improve some things and refine some things along that category, as well as just go over my memories. This being the first video of that is going to be more of an equipment test where I can establish like what I'm here to do, why I'm doing it, and see how the audio plays out in my recording environment, which is not perfect, and I'm recording on an iPhone, which I don't want to do, but it's what I got. And that being, I miss the days where I had people to talk to all day, every day, right? Talking to my friends regularly. Of course, that's really healthy for you, helps you decompress all these memories that start piling up, and especially me, who has a really hard time dealing with some of the things that pile up. It's good to kind of talk it all out, because talking helps organize your thoughts, and you think by talking. You know, you can have all kinds of things floating around in your head, but you're never going to make it make sense unless you try and say it out loud, and it helps to get those things out. And going back into the past, kind of like that, reminds me, I used to be really good at talking. I used to be not just more quick-witted than I am now, but I used to have a much better vocabulary and be much more fluid with my speech, be a better speaker, not just in casual conversation, but in front of a crowd, in public speaking and things like that. And I'd like to get some of that back and remember some of that. And it'd be nice to have a record of stories and thoughts on different things to better explain myself, how I view certain things, as well as keep that for the future. I'd like to, in my speech, when I make these things, be a lot more careful in my speech. I rely, just like everybody else does, way too much on interjecting ums and ahs and likes and curse words whenever I'm speaking to people I'm close to. It doesn't make you sound very intelligent, number one, but it's also because you're not considering your speech and thinking before you're speaking, and helping yourself with that in being a better speaker helps you so much with word recall and, like I said, getting that vocabulary back, and really having a much better and clearer and more brief way of explaining your thoughts. Like that saying goes, if you don't use it, you lose it. Well, I remember what that was like, and I have so many times when I'm speaking to people now that I know I have a word to express what I'm thinking, but I can't remember what the word is. So maybe going through and talking about things like this is going to help me talk in the future. Practice is always good. And in the way of telling these stories, because I'm going to be telling a lot of stories, as well as thinking about more cerebral ideas, I'd like to have a chance that I don't get a lot talking to people, because you have to respect their time. But here, I'm only wasting my own time. I'm free to go down any rabbit holes I care to do, and go on long tangents and follow wherever my mind takes me out into the weirdness of whatever human memory is. And I want to talk about memory more to kind of close up. But for now, I think this would be a really good opportunity to finally have a way to say things on my own terms. I feel like when I talk around my friends now, I always have to put on an act or a persona of dishumility to amplify like some other parts of my personality that I perceive they like more, so they want to see more. And that's not being authentically myself. Of course, I say things a lot of times. I'd say the majority of my speech is to get my friends to laugh, because we used to have serious and personal conversations just as a matter of course, because we were around each other a lot more. And I think we didn't have so many things in the way of us trusting each other. But like everything else, I'm out of practice on that as well. So this will be a chance to get more genuine, and instead of putting on a show, and instead of going into that more goofy or bombastic or charismatic persona that they see on me more often. So they know things I say when I'm around them. It's not what I really believe. Like, I'm saying it in jest. Like, I don't really think those things a lot of the times. And it'll be a way for me to get more in touch with that part of myself that I don't see a lot, because I'm always having to, put on whatever that mask is to operate around people, because I feel like they wouldn't like me. And if you don't practice being yourself, it's really hard to when you really need to. So I'd like to kind of get that back. And I'm sure I'll develop rules for how I want to say things going through these, but for now I want to make sure to not just tell an event, but really say how I felt about it then and how I feel about it now. We discuss, and it's really easy to discuss events, in fact, but when it gets to feeling, it's so much more of a personal world, and it's one that I'm not in as much as I used to be, and I really want that more than anything, to show people what's on my heart, Edgar Allan Poe has a saying that I really like, and he was a great author and dealt with many of those parts of yourself that are more, or parts of stories too, that are more dreamlike and more metaphorical. And he said, I may not get this quite right, but he said, no man has dared to record the true wonders of his inner life. And of course, there's no way you can do that. If you even tried to explain what's going on in your mind, in your imagination, like from day to day, it would just take lifetimes to do that. But this is a little way to get some of it out, and to get it to the people that I care about, that I want to know these things. And I hope they kind of feel the same way. This is not going to be useless, even if nobody listens to it. I'm going to get something out of it. But maybe my friends have that kind of feeling that I have about them, where it's like, I just really want to know what's going on inside their head. I really want to know who they are, what they believe, what their fears are, what their dreams are, the worst thing that's ever happened to them, and the things that they can celebrate. The real things that make you is what I want to get down to. And maybe the people that I want to listen to this will take the things and say, wow, I didn't know that, or I see you differently, or that really explains some things. Because I'd really like to, the people that I really love, I'd really like to unzip and turn inside out sometimes, because I'm so curious about them, but I have no way of saying it, or no way of getting to those things on my own whimsy. Just in closing, I'll say a few things about memory. And, I engage with a lot of pop culture, and some of that's really goofy, but a lot of it, it's people that write those stories as well. And I think of the main kind of through theme of Red versus Blue, especially the getting to season 10, as memory is the key. That phrase seemed to come up a lot, and they were using it kind of on the level that I'm using it, more so for their story, but they were saying something bigger as well, which is, memory is the key. The only way to know where you are, and especially know where you're going, is knowing where you came from. So getting these thoughts in order may help me, as weird as it sounds, to understand myself better, because there may be things about me, ways I tell these stories when I'm around someone, that I wouldn't tell these stories to myself. That's its own issue, but I feel like memory's good. And speaking about memory, Subject 16 in Assassin's Creed Revelations, he was about to disappear, and Desmond didn't want him to go because he felt such a camaraderie with this guy who had been through the same things he had been through. But he felt okay with going because Desmond had learned about him. And his final words before he bows out are, what is a man but the sum of his memories? And, you don't come into this world with anything, or go out of this world with anything. But I feel like even if I lost all of my personal possessions and the clothes off of my body, you'd still have your memories. You could lose a whole lot. And as long as you don't lose your mind, you still have your memories and that story of how you got to be the person you are. And it goes on a long line of, I guess, as soon as people invented writing, they started recording the past. And not too long after that, people probably started recording their past. So there's a long tradition to what I'm doing as well. And I'd kind of like to be part of that because I think it's important. And your own personal story, your memory, even though it's such a different world, because we think the past is fixed, and it is, the events are fixed, but the way you feel about those events, or the way you interpret those events, can change with new information, just like everything else. But that drama of life and that story, if it's not important to anybody else, I'd at least like to get it all out, you know? That's a good way to say it. And I've had different thoughts speaking about life and drama, about whether it is a comedy or a tragedy, but I used to be firmly in the tragedy camp, and now I am very, very, very firmly in the comedy camp. But just like everything else, you're a different person from one day to the next, and 1 year to the next, and a decade to the next, and I assume as I go throughout life, all of these views on these things will change. So having a nice record to look back at and say, wow, I'm different than I used to be, or I'm not the same person, may have some value in it as well. I'm not sure where this is going to go, and I'm not sure if I'm going to have the motivation to make these often, or to make a lot of these, or I may think this is a stupid idea and never do it again. I didn't even feel like doing this tonight, but I told myself, it's like, oh, you keep thinking about it. If it's a good idea or a bad idea, you're not going to know until you try it. And I didn't really want to do this. But if I'm not proud of it, the more I do it, the better I'm going to get at it. So with that, the next one of these is actually going to be some stories. I'd like to have both funny things I can recall and reminisce on, and I'd like to have, more darker, harder things that happen to me throughout my life that are difficult for me to think about, and also I hardly ever get the chance to tell because they are difficult to hear as well. But next time I'd like to do something a little bit more lighthearted and give you some stories regarding funny things that have happened to me surrounding diabetes and the odd things that happen when my blood glucose gets severely low, because that's always a fun thing to go over. And I have all these little stories that people weren't around for, that they don't know about, that I'd also love to tell. And that's what I'll do next time. So stay tuned.